folks. Train.
That's right, people. Today we're going to look at Red Ball's most iconic level, Train. The history, the strats, the players, and the world records. Welcome to Insane Games. I'm Jetman. Now, I'm sure you're already familiar with the story of Sub-20 Train from Maximum's video on the subject. If not, you should definitely check it out. I'll link it in the description. Regardless, we're going to revisit that story, how that renowned strategy came to be, and how it, once dubbed the hardest strategy in the Red Ball series, has been utterly destroyed, and then see where Train is at today. The individual level speedrun history for Train begins, like most of Red Ball's other levels, with a pedestrian run with abysmal video by Sutal. A 26.46 second run, achieved on the 10th of July 2019, and that run would remain alone atop the leaderboard for over 6 months. Then, on January 18th, 2020, Maximum would swoop in with his IL sweep, including this run of Train. .3 seconds. Just enough to outperform Sutal. Right? Well, let's look a little closer. Sutal's run was timed using live split with manual triggering, and the timer was started early and stopped late. So what was his actual time? I had a look. The start frame is easy to recognize, but with this horrible video quality, noticing flag movement for the end frame could be difficult. However, something odd happened in this run. The flag got tilted for a single frame, so it's patently obvious that on that frame, a flag hit was registered. Therefore, I know that there would have been flag movement on the next frame, whether or not I can see it at this resolution. Sutal's time was therefore 26.3 seconds. Could that be right? A tie? Well, let's look at Maximum's run. It's a good quality video, so the retime was easy. 26.293 seconds. Okay, faster. But the only reason for a difference here is the NTSC frame rate. I can do better though. We have an input display, so I can recreate a task of the exact run. Doing so is unfortunately a rather painstaking process, and I never got it quite right. I did, however, get the first 15 seconds right, and that's enough that the position of the train will be correct for frame comparisons at the end. I can therefore reliably conclude that Maximum's run was 26.323 seconds. Uh-oh. Have I just invalidated the IL sweep? Well, technically we should round up Sutal's time to the nearest 31st of a second, which would make it also 26.323 seconds. There's a distinct possibility that it should be 26.290, but with a video of that quality, I'm certainly not going to give that to him. That brings back the tie, and Maximum's sweep stands. Barely. Now up until this point, we've only seen vanilla strategies employed. Yes, Maximum's run used spike glitch, but it wasn't terribly relevant. Our next world record would employ some real speedrun strats, and it would come quickly. Maximum's IL sweep only lasted a day, because on January 19th, the day after the sweep, Rare EG got this run. After jumping over the spinning bar, rather than dropping into the next available cart, Rare waited to land on the car behind so that he could roll along it and jump clear over the saw blades. After surviving the landing and managing to get in another jump to get on the wedge, Rare was well ahead of where a normal playthrough would have otherwise been. He was therefore able to get to the end of the tunnel in time to catch the flag as it emerged. Now for speedrunning. On the leaderboard, Rare's run is listed at 25.667 seconds. When I frame count it, I get 25.600 seconds, and when I look closer and compare with similar task frames, I conclude that the time is likely 25.613 seconds. A new second barrier has been breached. I'm going to splice in a little extra info here. I combed through some full game runs that were even older than Sutal's run to see what else I might find. I found that exactly 1 year prior, in 2018, Jandog got a personal best and third place run at the time with a 26.194 second train. Now that invalidates maximum sweep. Furthermore, Rare EG didn't break a second barrier with his 25.613 because his world record run from October 2018 included a 25.935 second train. But that's about all I managed to dredge up. Back to 2020. Next in our world record history comes a story of rivalry and redemption. Enter Motor Jam. On February the 7th, Motor Jam would take the record with a run much like Rare's, but with two important differences.
Oh, look at that. Done.
25.517 seconds. Just a tenth of a second ahead of Rare. But did you spot the differences? The second difference was how Red Ball got past the saw blades. He jumped off one of them. A red jump, a bit of foreshadowing of what was to come for Train. But it didn't actually make much difference here. The real progress was at the start of the level, where Motor Jam pressed right immediately so that Red Ball would push on the train, thereby compressing its cars closer together. This compression gets Red Ball past the opening parts of the level slightly sooner, leaving a little more time to set up the difficult saw blade skip, which is why it was done. But pushing on the train has another beneficial effect. It makes the whole train go ever so slightly faster, thereby making it emerge from the end of the tunnel a few frames earlier. It would be another 2 months before this difference would even be speculated about, and much longer before it would be confirmed. But the effect was there nonetheless, and it gave Motor Jam the edge in getting that new world record. That world record stood for over 2 months. Enter Lum, the rival. Lum first appeared unassumingly with a 26.677 second last place run. But on the 14th of April, he learned the world record strats and improved his time thrice over, finally ending up with this run. .500 seconds, an almost immeasurable improvement over Motor Jam. Now Motor Jam, unimpressed with being deposed in this way, was having none of it, and became intent upon a return to glory, and it would only be a matter of days.
Because we still need to go faster. Whoa! Guys, this is it. This is my redemption. No, I failed my redemption, dude.
But it wasn't a failure. MotorJam had achieved a 25.467 second run and reclaimed the record. So there it is, the story of rivalry and redemption. MotorJam introduced the train compression strategy and took the world record. Lum came along and did it slightly faster. Then MotorJam took it back, solidifying train dominance. That's how it happened. Well, allow me to throw a wrench or two into the works of that tale. First off, you may have noticed yet another name appear climbing that leaderboard. Skarmory. By the time of MotorJam's redemption, Skarmory had a 25.550 second time. But according to his YouTube description, he seems to have believed it was 25.517 seconds, tying MotorJam's original world record. So what did I conclude when examining this run? Well, a frame count reveals a time of 25.509 seconds, but since it's a good quality video with no drop frames, I can do better and conclusively say that it would have had an in-game time of 25.516 seconds. There is a third player in this race. Next, let's look at MotorJam's redemption. I agree with the 25.467 second frame count, but a closer examination reveals that the video somehow got a little ahead, and the actual time was more likely 25.516 seconds. Uh-oh. It seems that MotorJam's intuition, the "no, I failed my redemption" line, might have been right after all. Okay, how about Lum's record? Did he really have a 25.500? Well, when I frame count it, I get 25.533 seconds. Oh no, it looks like Lum never had the world record in the first place. What if I examine closely using train position and other factors to get an equivalent in-game time? Maybe it's all one giant 25.516 second tie. So I looked closely and concluded 25.419 seconds? How is that possible? It seems that Lum's run would have been world record, but it was ruined by lag. That's rough. So wait a minute. Does that mean that Skarmory actually had an untied world record on train for 3 days? To answer that, we have to look at MotorJam's original record. You recall it was 25.517 seconds, basically the same as Skarmory, so it's probably just a big tie. Well, no. My frame count gave me 25.433 seconds, and when I did a more accurate examination, I concluded the time was 25.452 seconds. So there's the real story. MotorJam got a new world record. A bunch of people tried to beat it, including MotorJam again, but they all failed. While this much less exciting than originally believed series of events was unfolding, another discussion was also brewing around train. Could the flag be reached before the tunnel? All the other levels were seeing their records being lowered, and it wouldn't be long before train would be the only one left with a record over 20 seconds. But if that flag could be grabbed before the tunnel, it could mean that finally every single level in Red Ball could be completed in under 20 seconds. Was sub-20 train possible? We had seen red jumps on the saw blades, and then it was discovered that red jumps could sometimes happen on the large spikes. Armed with these two skips, the sub-20 dream seemed real, and the race was on to make it happen. And we all know what came next. This momentous run from Maximum.
It's over. It's fucking over, dude. It's over, dude!
It's over, Max? No, this story has only just begun. It was May 13th, 2020, and Sub-20 Train, theretofore only a theoretical possibility, had become a reality. Max made a rather successful video on the subject where he dubbed Sub-20 Train the most coveted speedrun strategy in Red Ball, and ended his video on the subject like this.
And as for the possibility of this being used in full game speedruns one day...
That name and that conclusion haven't aged well. But before we delve into what came next, let's have a closer look at Max's run. Maybe I can ruin some of that history too. Maximum claimed a time of 18.167 seconds, and when I count the frames, I concur. But since it was an historic run, and since Max had an input display, I decided to recreate a task of the exact run, and this time I was successful. So the true time for this run was 18.226 seconds. Sorry Max, you lose 59 milliseconds. Now, what came next? You recall I said it was a race to achieve the first Sub-20 train. Maximum had competition, and his primary competitor was Norzor. Norzor didn't quit after Max got Sub-20 though. A couple weeks later, he would achieve his own Sub-20 train.
Yes! It's over! It's over! It's over! It's over!
18.433 seconds. Maybe. Let's look a little closer. 18.400 seconds. 18.433 seconds. Sorry, I didn't see any flag movement. 18.467 seconds. Still no flag movement. 18.500 seconds. There, the flag moved. So Norzor loses 2 frames. But when I compare with frames from a similar task, I get 18.484 seconds. Now, with 2 Sub-20 runs completed, train slowed down. About a month later, Norzor did manage the feat once again, improving his time, but still not surpassing Maximum. Well, not really. When I retimed that run, it turned out he tied his previous run to the frame. It wouldn't be until August before we would see another runner enter the scene. That was Mario 7829, becoming the 3rd person to get a Sub-20 train. He said in the description of the run, "I'm never doing that strat again." But that was a lie. He would return the following month and go on an absolute tear. On September the 5th, he got an 18.516. On the 6th, he got an 18.451. Then on the 7th, he took the record with an 18.194 second run. Of course, he didn't know it at the time because Maximum's run was still listed at 18.167 seconds. But that's okay, because on the 8th, he got an 18.097, which wasn't even his best run of the day, because he went on to get this run. .677 seconds. His video description reads like a pop-off. I finally did it. Sub-18 is possible. This is now unbeatable. And of course, it's over. The reign of Mario 7829 had truly begun. Of course, it wasn't over, and the run wasn't unbeatable. But I think Mario knew that, because he didn't quit. he was getting more completions and better consistency. While Max had one completion and Nor just a few, Mario was getting dozens. He even got 2 in a row at one point. But besting his sub-18 run was proving elusive. He needed a new strat, or perhaps an old strat. Were you paying attention to the start of that sub-18 run? Remember MotorJam's strategy of pushing on the train to compress the cars together? Mario hasn't been doing that. But on September 17th, he reinvented the strategy and quickly shaved another frame off the record. "17.645 seconds, and there's clearly still time to be saved." September 25th would mark the end of Mario's month-long tear through train. He got a 17.516 second run and declared it unbeatable. Then, in true Mario fashion, he proceeded to beat it. Twice. First with a 17.323, then shaving off another frame with a 17.290. And that's where the record stood for 2 months, with Mario the clear king of train, our conductor. But there were other developments in individual level speedrunning in those 2 months, namely the arrival of me, which triggered the development of the in-game timer edition of the game. The first person to pull off sub-20 train in the IGT edition would be Norzor, finally achieving his own sub-18 run. Then Mario would return to train, if only to prove that he still deserved his crown, or conductor's hat. And of course, he did. He trimmed yet another frame off his record, getting a 17.258. It sure was looking like we were approaching the limit for train. But I guess the train bug had bit Mario, and he would keep at it, hoping to eke out those last few frames. And then, something incredible happened. What? When I first saw that, I had to watch it several times to realize what even happened. He was on excellent pace, and then the level just ended. Actually, he hit the flag through that little piece of ground that I just call the wedge, and in doing so broke not one but 2 second barriers. Mario has done a lot for individual level speedrunning in Red Ball, but that run on December 5th, 2020 was his magnum opus. It was the birth of a new class of train IL, one beyond sub-20, today usually just called sub-16, though I call it pre-wedge. But with that masterpiece behind him, Mario appears to have retired from train. It stood almost to this day as his personal best on the leaderboard. Our story must continue with a new runner. Let me introduce you to Xbox Jaja. Remember that up to this point, only 3 people have ever so much as completed sub-20 train. Our new protagonist, Xbox Jaja, or just Xbox for short, became the 4th on December 14th, 2020 with that run. But the train bug hadn't bitten him properly yet. For that to happen, we would have to wait another month when on January 14th, 2021, Game Guy SD would come along with a new, or perhaps old, discovery. He noted that it was possible to perform the large spike skip not by jumping from between the last two cars on the train, but rather from between the next two. This is how the large spike skip was actually originally described by RareXZC over 2 years prior. Both he and RareEG had already pulled off the skip like this, but although it allowed for an earlier start, it was believed to be slower because you wound up with less speed going over the large spikes. GameGuy SD, unhampered by this misconception, showed that it could, in fact, be significantly faster. Just push the train, then roll back, and then forward again at the right spot, and you can get all the speed you need. Sometimes, the spike skip even works. Of course, GameGuy SD never actually managed to complete a sub-20 run, pre-wedge or otherwise. Hell, he still hasn't got one. But he did spark renewed interest in train. The first person to pick up and do attempts with this new fast strat was RareXZC himself.
I'm not really sure that seems to be the case, but it's still pretty sick. I'm going to continue to play it until I get a good run, like right now. Bro, what happened, yo?
And with that, RareXZC became the 5th person to achieve sub-20 train. The new fast start had put him nicely ahead of pace, making him and others wonder if that run might actually have been a failed sub-15 run. The possibility was exciting. Even MotorJam would try attempts.
Don't not bonk, so do bonk?
Do bonk, but only a little, I think.
Who sucks?
He said doing second turnaround without bonk.
Oh! Not sure.
Oops. You're not supposed to jump off that platform. That would have been an easy sub-20 otherwise. Despite that first day of interest from RareXZC and MotorJam, it was neither of these two players who would truly run with this new approach, but Xbox. The next day, Xbox started streaming his own train attempts. First, he got a small PB with an 18.032. Then he tied Mario's former world record with a 17.258. Then he beat it with a 17.194. But still, no pre-wedge runs, let alone a sub-15. For that, we would have to wait another day, as Xbox truly came into his own as the new train conductor. .452 seconds. Mario had been deposed. Now let's take a short break while I introduce the 6th person to achieve a sub-20 train. That was Snuggles. Feel free to forget that name. He's not coming back. Let's get back to the real progress where Xbox was grinding for that elusive sub-15 train. On February 3rd, 2021, he came agonizingly close with this run. "15 seconds flat." Xbox's comment was, "1 frame." Now let's talk a little bit about what's required to get this elusive sub-15 train IL. First, you've got to push the train. Easy. Then you want to jump out of the rear car at the earliest possible moment, with good speed. Then you need to get lucky and clear the large spikes, and again you need to have good speed as you do. And to cap all that off, you want to clear the spinning bar nicely so that you get a corner excel on the next platform. I haven't talked about that corner excel so far, but we've already seen it in a few of Mario's best records, including his epic pre-wedge run. It's what made beating each of them require a new strategy or optimization. Once you get that corner excel, you'd be hard-pressed to go much faster. Now, if we look at that 15-second run, it had all of those elements. He pushes the train, he jumps out nice and early with good speed, he clears the large spikes with even better speed, he gets the corner excel. Everything was just right until those saw blades sent him flying with an unwanted double jump. If he had just cleared the saw blades more cleanly, that would certainly have been a sub-15 train. Now it's time for another short break. You might have wondered why I showed you whoever that was with his 6th sub-20 train. Well, it was because I wanted to show you this run from the 7th of February 2021 by the 7th person to ever achieve a sub-20 train. Yours truly.
Did it!
17.677 seconds. That's a pretty decent start. I was working on other aisles at the time, but had been watching the excitement around train and decided to at least try it myself. It would be another month before I would take a closer look at train, but at least I had one run under my belt. The next day I found myself sitting in a voice chat on the Red Ball Discord server. Xbox was streaming more train attempts, and I was watching. In fact, I was the only one watching. But I saw it happen. Right there, in front of my own eyes, Xbox made history with the world's first sub-15 train. 14.774 seconds. But then tragedy struck. His OBS recording had failed. His poor computer, presumably powered by a Dorito, couldn't handle two simultaneous encoding processes, one for streaming to Discord and one for recording. He sent me what he had, but there wasn't even a single frame to recover. Understandably upset by this turn of events, Xbox felt he had disappointed the community. But he received nothing but encouragement from people. I reminded him, "It's not lightning, it can strike again." I figured he'd try again in a couple days and hopefully get it, eventually. But that's not how Xbox took it. You see, Xbox is a boss. And like a true boss, he just went straight back to the grindstone and replicated that run exactly as I remembered it. A mere 20 minutes after I reminded him he can strike again, he did. Let's watch it. The second ever sub-15 train. Xbox did it. Another second barrier broken. He was the undisputed train conductor. Over the course of the next 2 months, more and more players started getting their own sub-20 train runs. A dozen, then 2 dozen. The Red Ball community had been going through some major growth thanks to the success of the beginners tournament. But despite the influx of runners, nobody was approaching Xbox. The closest was Jonas Gaming, who also got himself a pre-wedge run of 15.290 seconds.
Finally. Oh my god. I'm so... let's go.
Nice job, Jonas. During this time, I also spent some time improving my train IL. First, I got a 17.290. And then, I got a 17.194. That gave me the fastest post-wedge time on the leaderboard. Well, not really. I already noted that Xbox also got a 17.194 just before passing Mario, and Jonas got a couple even better ones en route to 15.290. Finally, a little after me, Pogwin would get this run. .032 seconds. This run stood as the fastest post-wedge run on the leaderboard until just recently when Jed Corti got a 17 flat. Interestingly, this means that there are absolutely no 16-second runs on the leaderboard. However, if we're talking about the competition for the best post-wedge run, watch this. That's right, I have a 16-second run. I also have a 16.935. However, Xbox still reigns supreme because he has pushed this category down to 16.935, 16.903, and finally 16.871 seconds. Cool, but back to train records. I said that for 2 months Xbox had no real competition. But what happened after 2 months? Well, my Taz 3 video came out, with this reveal. Now, enough of those difficult strategies, let's do something easy. That's right, I'm coming for you, Xbox. I too got a sub 15 train. It wasn't world record, but I was only 1 frame behind Xbox. And to flex on him a little, I feel I must point out that this was my first sub 16 train also. I skipped over all those 15-second times entirely. I had actually accomplished it almost a month prior, just a few days after getting my 17.194. But when it came out, it lit a fire under Xbox, and he redoubled his efforts to secure his conductor status. I should note that Xbox hadn't been doing nothing this whole time. The race was on to get a sub 3 minute time in a full game 12 levels run, a feat that would certainly require sub 20 training. Xbox's strategy in this race was to simply be the best at train, and it seemed to be working for him, as he became the first to complete the strategy in a personal best. But as the race for sub 3 heated up, Xbox kept practicing train, and in so doing had replicated that 14.774 of his, and not just once or twice. He had almost 20 sub 15 train runs under his belt, while the rest of the community collectively had just 1. Mine. But now it was time to do better, and better he did by perfecting the finish and saving 1 frame. .742. That's pretty optimized. I was impressed. A new trick will be needed to do anything faster, and since I had finished my Taz 3 video, I had plans to try to go faster. but this level of optimization was getting me worried. Of course, that new trick would come. Unfortunately, not from me. Oh my. 14.677. Xbox has saved 2 more frames, and with some sort of crazy looking corner acceleration. Even he is declaring, "It's over," and calling the ending perfect. Those 2 improvements came out just days after my sub-15 reveal. A couple of weeks later, on the 26th of April 2021, Xbox was looking at Train again to see if there was any more time left to save. He concluded that 14.677 might stand for a while. Then, 2 hours later, he changed his tune, posting this run. Jeez, 14.645 seconds. He's calling it perfection, too. And he means it this time. I had only one reaction to this new run. Dude, do you have any idea the task level BS I'm going to have to attempt to top this? And all Xbox had to say was, "Sorry, trollface." Ugh. And that was it. That run sat alone atop the leaderboard for months. It was still there when I started writing this script. Nothing happened since. Right? Is this a Jetman video, or is this a Jetman video? Of course, something has happened since. But before we get into that, I would be remiss to make a video about the progress on train strategies without talking a little more about the full game scene. I mentioned the race for sub 3 and Xbox's strategy of being an absolute train boss. But what were normal people doing? They were doing the normal setup, the one Mario had been perfecting months earlier, while still swearing up and down that it was not run viable. The biggest difference now was that our understanding of the game had improved vastly. We now knew why it was sometimes possible to jump on red objects, like the big spikes. Without getting into too much technical detail, there's a bug in Red Ball that you need to trigger to fool the game into allowing you to jump off something without actually touching it. With this understanding, I was able to describe to runners the best approach to the large spike skip that would at least give them a chance of surviving the ordeal. It was still rather unreliable, but at least it was better than back when Mario was doing it blind. With this level of knowledge, the elusive status of Sub-20 Train as the most coveted speedrun strategy in Red Ball was finally dispelled. It was no longer a laughably IL-only trick. It could finally be used in runs. And it was. With it, the fabled 3-minute barrier was finally broken. June 2021 rolled around, and another major revolution was set to take place within the Red Ball speedrunning world: frame-perfect setups. You see, Box 2D, the Red Ball physics engine, is deterministic, meaning that if you perform the same inputs, you will always get the same result. With the aid of the now established task hack, we are able to craft predetermined input sequences that will get us the runs we want. Fundamentally, frame-perfect setups had been around for a while at this point. My 3.097 second level 1 was effectively a 1 frame perfect setup requiring the player to jump on frame 19. In fact, at least the first 5 levels had employed some sort of frame-perfect setup in their IL records. It was only a matter of time until they would make it into full game runs. The problem is, of course, that all those predetermined inputs will be frame perfect, and if you get just one wrong, you're not going to get the effect you want. With the game running at 31 frames per second, that leaves just 32 millisecond windows for the player to hit their inputs. That's pushing the limits of human ability. What's worse, even if you are superhuman and ridiculously precise, Red Ball isn't. Between the aliasing effects of the game running at 31 frames per second, Flash at 60, and your keyboard pulling at God knows what, there's no way a player will ever get above a certain level of consistency in any frame-perfect setup. It's therefore important to keep the number of frame-perfect inputs to a minimum. It's even better if missing the setup doesn't spell complete disaster and a backup strat can be employed. Finding such setups, which are still very fast, is quite an art. One legendary Red Baller has proven to be exceptionally adept at this task. Bird Banana. On June 5th, Bird came up with the now legendary Bird 3 setup, which can save over 2 seconds on level 3, and should you fail, it can still be backed up with a normal Fast 3. The next day, he would turn his attention to Train. His initial setups weren't much more than novelties, but slowly they were getting better. By the end of the day, he had a viable 3-frame perfect setup for sub-20 Train. Wait and press right on this frame. Then press jump on this frame. Release any time after the peak of the jump, and then press it again on this frame. Now you can just hold jump and right all the way to the wedge and roll on to victory. You didn't even have to worry about the dangerous saw blade skip because you get it guaranteed without even having to land on the train first. Over the next couple of weeks, runners were learning and practicing this setup, one of whom was Peanuts. Now Peanuts was attempting to get better at it, but in his ineptitude, screwed it up. He claims it was because he was on the can, but whatever. To begin, he missed the first frame perfect by being 1 frame early. It happens. Then he was 3 frames early on the second frame perfect. Okay, whatever. Then he missed the 3rd frame perfect altogether, rolling right off into the second card. Then, something cool happened. He got a double, no, triple jump and then went soaring over the large red spikes. And so, P-Bird was born. Sub-20 Train had a new setup now, with just 2 frame-perfect inputs, because the 3rd jump press could be done any time after rolling past that ledge, but before hitting the bottom of the cart. It had just ticked past midnight and was the 17th of June, and this night was proving to be a big one for Train, and it wasn't over yet. Peanuts must have stayed up. He wasn't done yet. You see, there were still problems with that setup. Between the spinning bar, getting caught in the 6th train car, the saw blades, and needing to get to the flag in time, there were still plenty of ways this could go wrong, and you're still only going to get a low 18-second time. At this point, the old 3-frame perfect setup was still kinda superior, but at 4 AM, Peanuts posted the solution. Just hold jump. It's easy, clears the spinning bar no problem, and you even get that sweet corner boost. The problem is, you're going to get stuck in that 6th card. However, with a judiciously timed 2-frame left tap, it all works out, because you get yet another triple jump. Now you've got plenty of height to clear the saw blades, and plenty of speed to make it to the flag on time. In fact, even a low 17-second completion is possible. The first runner to pick up on this strategy was Pogwin. Excited at the prospect of a large improvement in his 12 levels personal best, he looked into the strat and cleaned it up a little for Peanuts. He showed that the 2-frame left tap had a 5-frame window in which it could be hit. Technically, this would make the setup a 3-frame perfect one, but there's actually more possibilities. Yes, there's 5 2-frame taps that work, but there's also 2 3-frame taps that work, a 1-frame tap, and 3 more errant possibilities. With all these alternatives, it's hard to call it yet another frame perfect, not to mention the fact that 2-frame taps are easy. So there it is, P-Bird, a surprisingly simple setup for sub-20 train that has gone on to prove itself as very run viable. In fact, Maximum himself used it on June the 18th, the day after it was invented, to reclaim the world record, and has been part of every single world record since. Now, I said the night of P-Bird's discovery was a big one for Train, and that wasn't just because of P-Bird. Bird Banana was back on the case. And a few hours before Peanuts posted his discovery, he too posted an amazing setup, one for sub-16 Train. It's similar to the original sub-20 setup, but with shifted inputs. Press right here, then do a max jump here, now jump again here, then we get a cool sort of corner boost here. Now this is already a pretty decent 3-frame perfect sub-20 setup, but if you add one more precise frame release here, you'll get that corner boost on the next platform that we like so much. And this one isn't technically frame perfect, because a good finish can still be achieved if you're a frame early. Finish this off and check it out, a solid sub-16 run. While it hasn't been as popular as P-Bird, this setup has also proven run viable, with Norzor getting it in a personal best. But what can I, an IL runner, do with these setups? First, I tried the sub-16 setup and got it on my 3rd attempt ever. That was a little trivial, and P-Bird is even easier? Seriously people, if you haven't already, go get yourself a sub-20 or sub-16 run on the leaderboard. What are you waiting for? Any 2-bit hack can pull it off. So what shall I do? Well, the setups are for the start of the level. I can try pull them off with a perfect finish. What is the perfect finish for the sub-16 setup? Turns out, we just watched it, 15.323 seconds. Not to be outdone by the plebs, I decided to get it myself. Fortunately, it's not that hard. Just 1 frame perfect jump over and above the setup. In less than a couple of hours, I had it. Time for another splice. I found a faster completion for Bird's sub-16 setup, so I did it. No more measly tie with the plebeians. Yes! Boy. Okay, what about P-Bird? Who's got the fastest P-Bird? What? The same guy? That cannot stand. Is that the minimum? What's the sheet say? It seems not very good has shown that 2 frames better can be done. And it seems he only discovered it the very day I looked. Well, let's try get that. I looked into what was needed for the 17.194 second P-Bird. I worked out all the possible variations and picked a setup that seemed like it would yield the best result. It was time to start attempts, and it began very well. There we go, half a minute. I tied the current record on my 2nd attempt. P-Bird really is easier than the sub-16 setup. Then That evening I came back and got the untied P-Bird record. This was all on Valentine's Day, by the way. Happy birthday, Tasshack. We red ballers know how to spend Valentines. Okay. Unfortunately, it wasn't the 17.194 second time I was aiming for. I was a frame slow. But I was close, right? No. Getting that perfect P-Bird was hard. For 4 days, I spent a total of over 12 hours actively going for that time. I racked up over 300 completed P-Birds, including some 15 ties of the old record and 5 ties of the new one. But these aren't particularly good numbers. My P-Bird consistency varied between basically 0, when I was playing tired, to as high as 18%. And that's just the opening consistency. After that, there's more. The left tap, it's technically a 3-frame window, but if you don't get the intended one, the ending shifts around a bit. A frame perfect release, a frame perfect jump, a mid-air release that's technically a 2-frame window, but you're probably screwed if you don't get the intended one. And the final left press, probably a couple frame window, but that depends on whether you got the rest of it right. It felt like there was too many things that could go wrong. I came close, a lot, and collected some amusing train footage along the way too. Eventually it would come, right? Well, watch this. There, finally. There. I have performed the fastest known completion for P-Bird. Well, sorta. There's this task by Bird Banana. It's 17 seconds flat, and if anyone wants to pull it off in real time, have at it. It seems we've wandered a little off our original topic. Train World Records. We left off with Xbox's epic 14.645 second run that stood for ages. How on earth was I going to top that? First, we'll need to figure out exactly what Xbox did. Fortunately, beginning with his 14.742 second run, Xbox's videos include an input display. So starting with that run, I sat down with a Tasshack and figured out exactly what he did. Here it is. Now this run was a 1-frame improvement over his many 14.774 second runs. What was different? When I overlay the frames, they all line up perfectly. That is, up to this exact point. This is where Xbox released jump. That made him land a little earlier, getting a tiny boost off the train car here, saving that 1 frame. Originally, he must have just held jump all the way to the flag. This means that I also know Xbox's original sub-15 strat. It's 6 frame perfects, followed by a 2-frame window. Now that I had the strat, I could play around with it, looking for optimizations. I kept the 6-frame perfect opening, the Xbox setup, and looked for other ways to finish it. The first thing I found was that if you jump 3 frames before Xbox did, you can get an easy 14.710. I'm afraid we can't add a boost off the train car to this like Xbox did though, because it basically already gets it. However, when we went back 3 frames for the jump, we skipped over the best 2 frames on which to jump. These 2 frames unfortunately don't get an easy saw blade jump. But if I adjust the jump so it does, then release perfectly to get the train car boost, voila, 14.677. Unfortunately, I've replaced Xbox's 2-frame window with 3 new frame perfects, and I still haven't caught up to him. We're going to have to look at what he did again. Let's start with his 14.677 second run. Did he do what I just worked out was possible? No, he didn't. He jumped clear over all 3 saw blades. And then, what is this? He pressed left? Who presses left? But it gets him a new corner boost on the previous train car, and then 14.677. Well, let's figure this one out. Xbox jumps here, and if I jump on the same frame, I don't clear the saw blades. In fact, this is the same frame as my 14.677 finish. What's going on here? Xbox is ahead of me, and he's got a different rotation. Something has changed. And if we go back a bit, here it is. Xbox didn't do a max jump over the spinning bar. He released up 1 frame before the peak of the jump, and now he gets a slightly better corner boost. With this new revelation, we can work out the rest of Xbox's run. While we're at it, let's look at the 14.645. It's exactly the same, with the final jump just 1 frame later, getting a tiny bit more speed out of that corner boost. Xbox believed that it was the left tap and corner accel that allowed him to improve his record. But we now know the true source of his power. It's that early release over the spinning bar. Now there's an obvious strategy to beat Xbox's time. Do the early release for the improved corner boost, but don't do that stupid left press. We'll have to reintroduce a saw blade jump, but that's fine. So that's exactly what I did. There! That is a world record. I did it. I got the world record. Xbox's legendary 14.645 second run didn't really stand the test of time. In fact, it only lasted for 2 days. But I had a problem. My run, which was 14.581 seconds, wasn't ideal. I had worked out in the task hack that 14.516 seconds was possible. I'm sure Xbox could beat my record with ease. I had more work to do. There was something else I noticed during my attempts too. There was a variation on Xbox's setup which was similarly fast and yet distinctly different. I decided to investigate that variation too. The difference was that the left press turnaround at the start was 1 frame longer. It launched into the red spike skip a couple frames later, but with a little bit more speed. By the time each setup reached the spinning bar, they were about the same. And after this, the other variant almost seemed like it might be better. The big difference was that this variant didn't get a free corner boost with a max jump. But if you released on the right frame, you could still get a corner boost. When I worked out the possible completions in the task hack, the 2 variations were equal, with the best completion time of 14.516 seconds. I later asked Xbox if he knew about this variant, and of course he did. He even pointed out that his 15 flat was achieved with that variant. So I'm going to name this setup variant Xbox 15, and the other one Xbox 14. But wait a minute. If Xbox pulled off that variant in his 15 flat, and got the corner boost, it means that he was just 1 light jump away from getting 14.516. I have since re-examined the Xbox 15 setup and Xbox's 15-second run. It turns out to be even more insane than that. Firstly, the best completion for Xbox 15 is a 14.484, not 14.516. But Xbox didn't get a straightforward Xbox 15 setup in his run. He released Jump 2 frames early for that, but then repressed it later, making up the difference for an even better corner boost. Given that boost, if he had jumped over the saw blades a few frames earlier, it's possible he could have achieved a time of 14.387 seconds. So close, Xbox! Of course, I didn't realize all of this, and was still harboring the delusion that 14.516 was the best that could be achieved with either setup. And in pursuing that time, my attempts began to rack up. The sub-20 train runs were pouring in, and sub-16 runs too. I wasn't collecting sub-15 runs like Xbox though. I did get this one, however. $7.10. 14.710 seconds. Remember I mentioned that possibility with the Xbox 14 setup? It means I missed the superior corner boost though. I had another problem too. With two similar setups that had different release frames over the spinning bar, I didn't know which to aim for. Ideally, I would be able to recognize which setup I had done at the start and choose accordingly. But I never figured out how to do that soon enough to react and make that adjustment. Instead, I decided to just pick one of the setups and play accordingly. Since I seemed to be getting Xbox 15 much more often, I decided to go for that. I think it might also have more possible 14.516 second completions too. Unfortunately, even when I got the setup, most runs failed. They would just be a regular sub-20 train. Or I'd fall into the wrong cart. Then I'd just go for a fast post-tunnel run. For 5 days, I tried to get that perfect run. I had almost 300 sub-20 trains under my belt. Then, it happened. Can you see that? It is over. It was finally over. I had the perfect train run. 14.516 seconds. It was time to make a video on train and show this run off. I had all my footage. I downloaded and examined all the historic train runs. I interviewed Xbox. But this project just wasn't getting done. The summer came and I was away. Since the project was held up, I showed my run to Xbox and a couple others. I didn't want it to go completely hidden from contenders. In the fall, I would return, but there were so many new strats and things for me to catch up on with the other levels, and there were tasks to tie. But eventually, I would come back to train. But it wasn't just a matter of making the train video anymore. There was some new progress too. So let's look into that. It began mid-September with Roblox 8192 posting a new strat. It was added to the strat sheet under the name Beat IL World Record. He didn't know about the actual IL World Record, but it wasn't misnamed, because pulling off this strat perfectly would yield a time of 14.355 seconds. I glanced at the strat, but it looked kinda hard, so held off on going for it. Roblox had labeled it as having 6 to 7 frame perfects. It was, in fact, 13. But while I was shunning this monstrosity of a strat, someone else wasn't. From behind a curtain of secrecy, Roblox's setup was being studied and prepared. You see, there was one person undeterred by this leap in train complexity, and he had designs upon the conductor's power. This plot, and what came of it, has remained in the shadows, unseen by the outside world. That is, until today. Ladies and gentlemen, from the vault of Aeom. Did you see those triple jumps? And there was a left tap in there too. Incredible stuff. Now, for reasons that I won't be delving into here, the status of Aeom's runs are in a state of limbo. So that run, even though it is now public, will remain unofficial for the time being. But Aeom wasn't the only one working in secret at that time. I had ideas of my own. I wasn't going to be the blunt instrument of sheer force that was Aeom. I would be more strategic. Armed with Xbox's setups, I would find another way to save those frames. And find it, I did. Beginning with the Xbox 15 strat, I had one frame-perfect release as you traverse the large spikes. Now we'll land on the platform before the spinning bar earlier and with more downward momentum. This means we can bounce higher and get a better corner boost on the next platform. Then, with a Q jump off the train, you hold, get a saw blade jump, and if you release on the earliest possible frame, finish with a time of 14.419 seconds. But that lands on the flag from above. We can do better. Release jump at precisely the right point before the saw blades, so you jump off them sooner, and behold, I have my own 14.355 second setup. And unlike Roblox's, mine is only 9 frame perfects. But that setup would never see the light of day. And that was because of the next development in train technology. Now, mid-October, Bird Banana went to look at train again. He wanted to find Xbox's setup, which I had already done, but was having trouble. In the process, however, he stumbled upon another setup, which was even faster. Although originally thought to be 14.452 seconds, he quickly discovered that in fact 14.290 seconds was possible. And better yet, this setup has only 8 frame perfects. My 14.355 setup was obsolete before I even got a chance to try it. Bird's new setup flew under the radar for a while. It wouldn't make it onto the strat sheet until November. I was working on other projects and wasn't really feeling any pressure on train. Bear in mind that I had no idea what Aeom had been up to. In fact, I'm still not sure when he got his run. It's quite possible Bird's strategy was already out and he was just oblivious of it. But come December, it had to be done. I began attempts, and watch. On attempt number 3, I've already done the first 6 frame perfects. By the end of the first day, I had this run. That's all 8 frame perfects, but I screwed up the ending. Not by missing the 2 frame window though, but by missing a dirt simple 7 frame window. Still, that's an official world record. But I need to do better. And the next day, I resumed attempts. Sometimes you feel like you're on the cusp of pulling off a strategy, but it just never comes. This was not one of those times. Day 2, folks. Nice. That's it. There. I am the conductor. I have the material to once again make my train video. But I was lazy. Christmas came and went, and without my runs being published, that conductor position was beginning to look a little too juicy. Others were eyeing that 14.290 second setup and getting ideas of their own. Who exactly? Well, for starters, a new IL runner had appeared seemingly out of nowhere. Abkafed. He shot up the rankings in both 12 levels and ILs in no time at all. And of course, there was Aom. I reached out to him, which is how I learned about his 14.355 second run. These guys and a few others had begun an IL Horde project. And then another runner, the absolute indisputable champion of Red Ball 4 ILs, turned his attention to Red Ball 1, Lombre 914. It wouldn't be long before Train fell into their sights too. It was January, and these were the contenders. Could I get my video out before my 14.290 second run was old news? First, I heard from Lombre. They were definitely going for Train. That was a successful completion in the frame offset hack. It was just a matter of time now. But time marched on. My video wasn't ready, but nobody was getting 14.290 either. And then I heard, not from Lombre, but from Aom. Abkafed had achieved a 14.290 second run. My world record was tied. I reached out to Abkafed to see if I might reveal his run in my video too, and he was on board. Then, 5 days later, February 3rd, there was more news. Lombre had tied Train also. I was almost ready, so I asked him too. I could conclude this Train video with a big three-way tie. It was a good plan, but then Lombre had a change of heart. They had argued that the IL Horde project was not good sportsmanship, so allowing their run to remain hidden in the same way wouldn't do. Lombre's run was released to speedrun.com, so I let mine go up too. And then after the Unhorde video came out, and it was revealed that Abkafed was in fact Norzor, his run was unveiled as well. I'll admit, my motivation to finish my Train video project kinda died a bit after that. I decided that I needed more than just a tied world record to claim the title of conductor. I could go for that best post-wedge run, but I haven't even tasked anything faster than Xbox's 16.871, so I'm not too hopeful there. There's also a bit of competition for the fastest 25-second or post-tunnel run. The best time on speedrun.com is 25.355 seconds. I would go for it sometimes on failed record attempts. My best time is a frame faster at 25.323 seconds. However, Xbox is still boss in this category and is ahead by 2 more frames at 25.258 seconds. Beating that would not be an easy task. But there is a conductor trick which can be used to cheese a faster time, so I did that. That was an unbeatable 25. Unfortunately, it doesn't really count, or would have to be another category yet. These categories aren't quite what I was looking for to distinguish myself, though. Another idea I had, I've already shown you. That was the perfect completions to the Sub-16 and P-Bird setups. Those were pretty good, but I want more. Fortunately, Bird Banana had pinged me with just what I needed. A setup for glitchless Train, and a pretty simple one at that. It was time to make it happen, and do what no one had done before, and get Sub-20 Train without glitches. Would you believe that with 75 attempts, and in less than half an hour, with a 15-minute break, I got this run? That was it, folks. The world's first glitchless sub-20 train. You may have noticed how close that was to being not only sub-20, but sub-16. That's because no sooner had Bird posted his setup than he realized it could be sub-16. And that's what I had been going for. Didn't quite make it that attempt, but it would come. Unfortunately, I had no more luck that night, despite some 1,400 attempts. But the next day, now at around 2,100 attempts, that's right, glitchless sub-16 train is real too. I have a little problem though. This strat can be completed 2 frames faster, and I'm a perfectionist. We're not done yet. Shenanigans happened. And I stumbled upon a fake setup that doesn't exactly work out well. But on day 3, after some 3,500 attempts, there you have it, folks. The complete history of how Red Ball's 11th level came to be what it is today, and how I, Insane Jetman, came to be your undisputed conductor. What? Yes, undisputed. Yeah, I know it's tied, but you saw, I got that first. And I got the first 14.5x, and I got the perfect P-Bird, and the perfect sub-16 setup, and the first glitchless sub-20, and the first glitchless sub-16, and I maxed that strat too. What more do you want? Alright, fine. Let's review my personal bests and records to remind you why I am the undisputed train conductor.
My lord?
They have it off the rails even before the endless mess. I have more right to drive that train.
There will be dark days ahead.
We have to go fast, then so be it. Come, we have work to do.
Did you think it was over? Did you think I was just going to drop a run from last February and be done with it? It's never over, folks. I've got a train to drive. Now, first, let's look at how the hell I got that 14.194. Bird Banana's 14.290 second setup included a frame-perfect jump on the platform before the spinning bar to maintain speed over the spinning bar. I used that same technique when looking for a train setup suggested to me by Pierce, one of the top 12 levels runners, to come up with a strategy now called PJet that's proving quite useful in that category. But I can use it again here with the superior Xbox 15 setup. Find the right releases and voila, 14.194 seconds. And technically, it's only 8 frame perfects, plus 3 2-frame windows, unfortunately. In fact, add another frame-perfect release, and 14.161 seconds is possible. But I'm afraid that's about all that can be possibly squeezed out of Xbox's setups. If we're going to go faster, we'll need to find a brand new setup from scratch. So that's what I started looking for. I explored hundreds of possible start sequences, and it wasn't long before I had options with some promise. And then I found one, 14.097 seconds in 11 frame perfects, or even 14.065 in 14 frame perfects. I kept searching. 14.097 was down to 10 frame perfects, and then I had 14.065 in just 11. Then 14.097 in 9 frame perfects, and 14.065 in 10. Then 14.032 in 13 frame perfects. Then I found a novelty setup. Check this out, 14.903 seconds in a mere 6 frame perfects. Technically it's 8, but I've been counting left to right and right to left changes as just 1 frame perfect for these new setups. Beginning with first frame Excel, there's an arbitrary 1 frame left tap here. Then we swap from right to left here, then back to right again here, jump here, then again here, and you're home free. All you have left to do is release jump momentarily as you corner boost off this ledge. And presto, 14.903. Pierce modified this setup to get a 14.226 second setup. At the end of August, he performed the setup and broke the big 14.290 second tie. Too bad for him, that hasn't actually been the record since February. But back to real setups. Eventually, I managed to find 14.032 seconds in 11 frame perfects. This was good and all, but we are so close to breaking a new second barrier, perhaps the last second barrier. It would be absolutely epic to be the one to get the first 13-second train. Rare EG was the first to break a second barrier, and then of course so did Maximum and Mario twice, and then Xbox. That would be some good company to be in. Now I was confident that with more searching I would soon find a 13-second setup. But that's not what happened next. To understand what happened next, I need to introduce you to someone new. Meet Starline. Starline is many things, but nowhere has she had a larger impact than in TASing. First with Red Ball 4, but then in Red Ball 1. We are now at a point where more than half of the 12 levels TAS is her work. So when she turned her eye to RTA setups, incredible things started to happen. First level 2, then level 7. Then in March we saw the first train setup from Starline, 14.387 seconds in just 8 frame perfects. A neat setup, much like the novelty one I just showed you, slightly harder, but nicely faster. good for someone looking to get a decent 14-second run. Next, she went for faster, with 14.129 in 12 frame perfects. Well, that is a world record setup, but not one anyone should be wasting any effort on. But I said a new development was brewing from Starline, and her next setup was it. Check this out. 14 seconds flat in 11 frame perfects. Now, you have my attention. When I got a chance, I looked at this setup. It has several neat characteristics which I'll get into later. But the first thing I found was a tiny little optimization. Release jump right here over the saw blades and watch. That, folks, is a sub-14 train with an RTA viable setup. This is getting exciting. Unfortunately, it's 13 frame perfects now, but still viable. So let's look at this setup. We begin normally with an added left tap at the beginning. This is exactly the sort of thing I was trying as I looked for setups. Then we have the turnaround to jump out of the cart. There's a 1 frame gap between the left and right presses, which means it's harder than the ones I had been experimenting with, but still easier than Xbox's. But look at the timing of that jump out of the cart. It's 4 frames ahead of my best setup, and 5 or 6 ahead of Xbox. And it's a max jump, which is good because there's no extra frame perfects there. Then a frame perfect jump, which is to be expected. Unfortunately, it's followed by a precise 2 frame release. You gotta do what you gotta do to get the red jump. Next comes a frame perfect release, presumably to line up the upcoming corner boost. Now we buffer jump and release frame perfectly over the red bar. That can't be right. Look at our X velocity. We're going slow. Remember how we made the Xbox 15 setup faster with a well-timed jump on that platform? We're going to be able to do that again. But before we do that, let's finish going over this setup. We get the corner boost, but it's not just any corner boost. Because our X velocity was below 5, we actually get a frame of ground acceleration first, making it a very good corner boost. Tack on 1 more frame perfect jump and release, and hey presto, 13-second train. Now let's make this setup faster. Move this release back, add the frame perfect jump on the platform here, release so we get the corner boost, jump on the best possible frame, and what have we got? 13.742 seconds. That's a bloody TAS tie, people. I didn't realize that at the time. For some reason I thought the TAS was a low 13-second run. But this is exciting, folks. We could actually get an RTA TAS tie on train. I sat on this strategy for about a week before finding time to do some attempts. I decided that rather than go for the full 13.742, I would go for any 13x. So I shifted this release back so that it would be a 2-frame window, and the final jump would then be a 4-frame window. 11 frame perfects for a 13x. My best result the first night would be a pair of identical 14.387 second runs, where I missed the last frame perfect release over the spinning bar by just 1 frame. This is doable. The next day, I was reading the RB1 Strats channel on Discord when Starline posted an RTA viable train TAS tie setup. The very same one I had found just a week prior. She was a little astounded when I claimed to already know it, and I think didn't believe me at first. But when I pointed out that it was just an optimization of her 14 flat setup, it made sense. Turns out she didn't find it that way, but had rediscovered the whole damn setup from scratch. That cat is a tassing machine, I tell ya. Now the news of my having hoarded a train setup for over a week didn't go over terribly well. people wanted to go for the new time. Starline, Lombre, maybe more. Which is fair enough, I guess. These new tech races are good community competition. Practically speaking, I only had a 1-day head start, and I wouldn't be able to run for a day. So, the race for 13-second train was on. I talked with potential contenders so that I might reveal the results of the race in this video. So let's see how it went. In fairly short order, Lombre was getting close. That was 7 of the first 8 frame perfects. Good, but still some work to do. Regardless, I'm really feeling the squeeze, especially with my limited time for attempts. Starline then claimed to get it in the practice hack. Are you kidding me? This is insane. Not even one of the far more probable near-miss times of 13.774 or 13.968. I can't even play until tomorrow. I hate everybody. But tomorrow came, and I got doing runs. This is not an easy setup, and those two are going for the full thing while I'm just doing the abridged version. The runs poured in, and I was getting close-ish, but nothing quite right. Then I got it. Well, sorta. Okay. That was a 13.774 completed in the practice hack. Ignore the apparent missed frame perfects. It was in fact exactly what I was going for. Still, this setup is hard, and as close as I was, it still felt out of reach. But I was determined that I would be the one to break that second barrier, probably train's last second barrier. And ladies and gentlemen, that evening, on the 22nd of April, I got this run. Go on. 13.806 seconds. The world's first 13-second train. Rare EG. Maximum. Mario 7829. XD Xbox Jaja. An insane Jetman. We are only 2 frames short of the task now, and if I had jumped 1 to 3 frames later at the end there, we would only be 1 frame short. That task tie was within grasp, and the race to get it was still on. And now there was a new player in the race. Was it Norazor? No, he was busy working on level 10 for the National Supremacy Project, though he did say he might give Train a try if it was still up for grabs after he got 10. How about Pierce? Yeah, right. It was Big Mugmug, the legendary full-game runner and, at the time, world record holder himself. He had been going on a tear through the IL leaderboards, getting lots of good times, including quite a number of tied world records and 1 untied. In fact, just a few days earlier, he had tied the public train world record of 14.290. Encroaching on my territory there, Muck. Don't make me start running 12 levels. Now, despite his rise on the IL leaderboards, Muck had never performed a setup quite like Train Task Tie before. But this was as good a time to start as any. For the next few days, we were all going for that elusive Task Tie. Well, everyone except Starline, that is. You see, Starline had a different plan. Figuring she wouldn't likely win the race, she decided it would be easier instead to ruin it for the rest of us and just improve the tasks. And on the 26th of April, that's what she did. That's a 13.419 second TAS. Rip the TAS die. But oh well, that's where I thought the TAS was in the first place. And of course, over the next hour, she pushed it down yet another 2 frames. Our next development came from Big Muck Muck. His attempts had yielded some success.
What?
He tied my world record. You heard he was a bit confused by that finish though. He was, of course, going for a 13.742 second time. Something had gone wrong. I checked, and he didn't do exactly what I had done. Rather than being 3 frames late on this release like me, he was 2 frames early. The rest sort of follows from there and results in the 13.806 second time. Next, I need to mention that with the new faster TAS came new faster RTA setups. They are harder, of course, but not outside the realm of possibility. Times as low as 13.387 seconds may just be possible with current knowledge. Lombre and Starline decided that these new setups would be their way forward, while Muck Muck and I, invested in the old setup, wanted to perfect it first before looking at those faster setups. So, for the next while, that's how things stood. 4 of us eyeing a new train world record, but only one of us has had any success. It was me, folks. Watch this as I tie the now former TAS.
Yes! Boy.
The train has left the station. Of course, it's not over. I told you, faster is possible. So come join the jet stream at twitch.tv/InsaneJetman, and maybe we'll go faster. Or do something else cool. Meanwhile, thanks for watching, folks. We're not done yet, are we? There's more. There's always more. Next, I want to give another quick nod to Bird Banana. In addition to making great setups, he's also been doing some really cool drawings. Of note, he made this awesome one, which raises the question, can the Jetman stop the train in Red Ball? Of course I can. Forget sub 20 train. I got the first ever Super 60 train. There had been a little competition for the slowest run of train. Taco Pinky got a 34.355 second run. Popeichman got a 35 flat, and Mr. Frosty got a 35.129. Those were the contenders, as far as I'm aware. I think I've got them beat. We might have to make a no conductor tricks rule if slow trains are to be competed for anymore. But now it's time. to go for that 13.387 second setup. This setup, I'm afraid, is a little insane. 18 frame perfects, plus a 2-frame window and a 3-frame window. Now there's a left to right and a right to left transition in there, which each count as 2-frame perfects. Fortunately, with my keyboard matrix trick, they're effectively just 1. Even still, this setup is obscene. But I started learning it anyway. I wasn't going to bother with any of the slightly slower variations. Rumors were circulating that Starline had already achieved a 13.516. Unfortunately, getting something even resembling the setup was just not happening. Slowly, however, with practice, I started getting used to the feel and rhythm of all those frame perfects. I was getting closer. And after 4 days of learning, I got my first 5.9 launch. Now before we go any further, let me explain what that means. Let's look at how this setup works, and how Starline improved that 13.774 second task. We begin to push the train, and then there's 3 rather arbitrary looking left taps. They are there to manipulate the precise way the train cars compress. Next, we've got our turnaround. It's a bit faster and smoother than the ones from the Xbox and other previous setups. And while that has its advantages, it has one big disadvantage. We haven't set up an easy 5.5 jump, which we will need to get to our launch point. Instead, we've got to do a left-right jump. If you work on this setup, you will learn to hate left-right jumps. But if you get all that, what comes next is incredible. Just hold jump, and our landing location on the train has been set up beautifully. It's actually on a downward slope, so we get a horizontal velocity boost. We will leave with Vx equals 5.9, rather than Red Ball's normal maximum speed of 5.5. Additionally, we'll pick up the contactor bug that we need for red jumps. All that with no additional frame perfects. That speed boost is what makes these faster times possible. Unfortunately, just getting this far requires getting 14 of the 18 frame perfects. What remains is a jump release here so that we get the red jump. Another jump release here, followed by a 1-frame left tap here, which has a 2-frame window. Together, those 2 inputs set up the upcoming corner boost. The left tap was required because we actually have too much speed to get the fast jump here, which is our last frame perfect. We do a max jump, get our corner boost, and finally jump to the flag from a nice big 3-frame window. So it's been 4 days of practice, and I've got past the first 14 frame perfects once, and that was with input display and everything. The next day, I got it again. I even tried some attempts in IGT, and got this run. That was a 5.9 launch in IGT. This setup isn't just a pipe dream. It could actually happen. I continued to practice and slowly started to ramp up actual attempts. But a couple weeks in, I had passed 18,000 attempts and only had a half a dozen or so 5.9 launches. Worse yet, none of those made it past the next frame perfect, and hence past the big red spikes. I did a quick calculation. At this rate, I might easily take 250,000 attempts. And that might just be me being optimistic. It would really help if I could improve and bring my consistency up. It was early July, and I had other things to do. I took a couple weeks off before dusting off train again. Fortunately, when I resumed, I was able to see my consistency improve. It wasn't all good news, though. I also discovered that there were fake 5.9 launches. eerily similar setups that looked the same, but which would never yield a 13.387 second run. I found 4 such launches in total. At around attempt 20,000, I got my first completion. Oh man. As new attempt data poured in, I watched my remaining attempt count estimation drop to 100,000 or perhaps even fewer. It was beginning to feel like it was just a matter of time before I got it. But my summer holidays were looming. Could I get it before heading east? By the end of July, I was at 35,000 attempts and had some 50 5.9 launches. But only 4 of those had made it past the red jump, and no 13.387. Unfortunately, time was up. I would have to wait to continue this project when I came back. So were there any new developments when I got back? Well, yes. I might have some competition, it seemed. Starline had allegedly been close in the practice hack, and Norzor was learning the setup too. I got in some de-rusting practice and attempts, but it wouldn't be until the last week of August when I could properly resume. The grind was back on. It was August 31st when I got the news. The terrible, catastrophic news. Norzor had a run. For context, on the 17th of June, Norzor had achieved all 17 individual level world records on the speedrun.com leaderboards. It was, however, a not so well kept secret that the sweep wasn't really complete because Train had hidden records, which you have now seen. If Nor had even a 13.516, this would be big news. Let's watch his run.
Whoa! Whoa!
The Norzor IL sweep was finally, truly complete. That's cool and all, but that also means that my conductor record has been broken. That cannot stand. I was at some 45,000 attempts by then, and that grind was not going to stop until I was back securely in my conductor's seat. The runs poured in. I was getting 5.9 launches. I was getting completions. I was getting incompletions. And weird stuff, too. What is this run? But the coolest failed run I had was this one. A 16.871 second post-wedge run. I tied Xbox. But enough about failed runs. On the afternoon of September 11th, 60,000 attempts in, I got this run. Oh yes. Not a 13.387. But I was back. I had the world record once again, albeit tied. Norzor might still have his sweep, but I still have my conductor's hat. Balance has been restored to the universe. It was time. Time for me to once again resume work on this video. Let's get those leaderboards up to date and invite everyone to watch the race to 13.387 seconds. So here we are.
Jetman.
Pierce, what are you doing here? This is my video.
You're holding out on us, Jetman. I know it. I was there. I have witnesses. You got a run. We heard you, and it wasn't the one you just showed us.
He's right, you know.
Shut up, Nor.
Nor asked if you got the 387. You said no. You said it was a frame off. You said you got 419. It was sus then, but now I'm certain. You lied to us. Quit holding out on us, Jetman. Show us the good stuff.
Pierce, you should know better. The Jetman doesn't lie about such things. I said I got a 419. You just saw it. But you're right. There was another run. And you heard me get it. But I told the truth. I never got a 13.387. I said I was a frame off. I just never said which way. Ladies and gentlemen, behold, the fastest run of Red Ball train ever performed. Untied, world record by yours truly. I am the conductor. I am the Jetman.